Hey everybody, welcome back to Old Guy's Garage. Appreciate you stopping by. This episode we're going to be going over the rear end restoration that I've done on the 72 Olds Cutlass, focusing on the gas tank as well as the rear end. Here's a quick video that I took of the rear end of the vehicle as it was on the tow truck on its way from my grandmother's house where it's been parked for 40 years and away to my garage where we're doing the restoration. And here's a pic of the 72 getting loaded up on the tow truck with my dad behind the wheel. Here's a great picture of the gasoline, how lacquered up it was, sitting for so many years. The pump I completely ruined. There's just so many rust particles and pieces of debris that just totally destroyed the seals in the pump. So one tip that I did do here, I had a black fuel hose that I shoved down into the gas tank, and then I ran my clear hose from my pump, and this seemed to work really well. It kept the hose from kinking. And here's a few pictures of the blocks that I've been using, made out of 2x10s. So I cut these approximately 18 inches wide. I got 5 pieces out of an 8-foot length. So I generally start off with 3 blocks under each tire, and then I'll come back around adding another 2 or 3 blocks. So I generally don't add 4 blocks, start off with 4 blocks or 5 blocks. It definitely seems to really kind of compress the suspension in the opposite direction. So raising the suspension with 1 to 3 blocks really works well, and it's safe too. And here's a picture of the blocks in use. Here I have 5 blocks over under the rear tires and 4 under the forward tires. I've added more as I gain more confidence raising the car, so that definitely allowed me to move around, scoot around as I was progressing forward in the frame restoration and gas lines and new fuel lines. Stepping back, here's a picture of the 72 up on the blocks. The gas tank is in the big cardboard box there to the right that's leaning up against the 86 Olds. So what I have laid out here is some of the tools that I used on the back of the car restoring the gas tank and the frame. So good old POR 15 system that I've used up here, as well as a few disposable spray bottles. Wanted to stay within the system to make sure that this paint worked at the best that it could. So I like the pint size here. These work great. I can definitely get at least 2 uses out of this. Just make sure you clean the top of this really well. I definitely found acetone cleans it up really well as long as you get it right after usage instead of waiting for an hour or 2. So the system worked really good. The pictures here that you guys will be seeing will definitely show the system in process. Then moving on down here, these are some of the good old tools here. Of course, the brushes for the POR 15. This I laid on the garage floor. Wanted to make sure that was protected. Wasn't sure, being the first time that I used it, I didn't want it staining the garage floor. So lots of different metal brushes. Got a lot of those from Harbor Freight. Great to get the dirt, grime, loose rust off. Fortunately, there wasn't much loose rust on this car. It was rather really good shape. Scraper also works great, especially for any undercoating. This tool here will kind of slosh it around. You'll get it off, but you kind of move it around before it wants to get off of the frame. And other body parts, well, this will just scrape it off. And I found using this first and then coming in, then using this works the best. These are here great for any fine tuning, along with like acetone to get any other residue off. And of course, I use a degreaser in certain areas as well as the blaster. WD-40 works great as well. I don't have a can with me. It's in my truck on a job site. So, but WD-40 work great, particularly the really small can size. You can get up there and kind of spray where you need to spray. Safety goggles, of course, especially when you're using this guy. Works fantastic. Extra hose clamps for the fuel lines. These are some of the tools. 3/8 and 7/16 for the brake lines. Seemed to be all that I needed. This is a 5/16 socket. Use that on the hose clamps. 5/8 wrench, as well as 5/8 socket. Well, hold on just a second. Ooh, 9/16 socket. Sorry about that. 9/16 was great on the two main bolts that hold the gas tank up, and this one here was 3/8. So 3/8 on the rear. The smaller bolts that hold the gas tank straps up. So, and then don't forget, you're also going to need plenty of these good old rags, and they also come in this variety and this variety. So been using all of them. So and then in the end, don't forget to have this stuff, good old Gojo. That stuff, whoops, going for a ride there, pretty much stays in the shower. So yeah, sometimes it gets pretty messy after working on a car, as you know, and that's made a permanent fixture in our bathroom. Final note, don't forget, these always come in handy. Keep track of your screws and bolts. And then some type of air protection. So breathing protection, that's an N95 mask. There's other respirators and things like that you can also use that are highly recommended when using the POR-15 system. And here's the stainless steel gas tank kit that I bought off of eBay. I believe it was around $330 or so. It came with the sender, the straps, and all the good stuff. And let's not forget about the brake lines. These are from Classic Tube. I purchased these through Summit. Worked really well. There's a few kinks here and there. I recommend keeping your old lines and then checking those against these new ones from Classic Tube, and then you can get things just right. I also needed one of these bolts. This goes on top of the rear end. The old bolt, the stock bolt, just didn't want to fit. So I found this one off eBay and went ahead and used it, and it's been working great. Here is the W27 cover that I bought. I bought this from oldsparts.com. I don't know why. I just seen when I was looking online at pictures, this one looked like the best. And I went ahead and purchased that one. You can also find them in kits that come with the gasket here shown and the bolts. So I didn't find that till later, but I wish I would have found that sooner. I may have bought that option as well. Okay, so we've gone over the parts and supplies, at least most of them that I can remember. Here we're going to get ready to drop the fuel tank and begin the Cutlass restoration. So this is a pretty big deal, pretty big first step. Let's not forget about a jack. You're definitely going to need a jack, obviously. So this one's a 3-ton. Bought this years ago from Harbor Freight. It's been working like a champ. Pictured below, I took one of those 2x10 blocks and routed out a circle in there to fit on top of the jack. I just didn't want the board to slip around as I was lowering the fuel tank. So it worked really, really well. And here's a picture. It looks like I just dropped the main bolts holding the gas tank up. So the gas tank is now supported by the jack and the 2x10. And before I forget, the two main 9/16 bolts that are holding the gas tank up through those straps there, I did use a lot of WD-40 on those. And before I disconnected these bolts, I want to say that I did cut the hoses for the venting. Cut the hoses, and then I also disconnected the fuel line, and as well as the ground that attached to the frame. I disconnected that as well. So look for those. And in this image here, I'm starting to lower it little by little and scooting it forward at the same time to make sure that the gas tank neck clears the bumper and the frame. Here we are with the gas tank on the floor. Jack has been removed. And looky there, there is a build sheet on top of the gas tank. And you can see that wire dangling there. That is for the fuel sender. That just pops out. So as you're lowering the gas tank, you can pull on that, reach for it, and pop it out of the fuel sender. And this was a pleasant surprise. It's coated, it gives all the details on how the card was made, when it was made, the options selected by the dealer, and what dealer purchased it. And a fun fact here, it looks like my dad purchased his 72 Cutlass from Bommarito Oldsmobile, which I also purchased my Cutlass from Bommarito Oldsmobile when I was 18 years old. Imagine that. And here's a closer look at the gas tank on the ground there, and all the seepage and dirt and grime and all that fun good stuff. And this is the fuel sender, so keep in mind this has been in there for about 40 years. It's a great example of what fuel does after it has been sitting in your gas tank for a really long time. So if you find that old car you want to restore, it's been sitting a while, I definitely highly recommend new fuel tank and new sender. And here we are with the gas tank removed, and you have a better picture of the rear end, the rust and some of the grime and oil and brake fluid and all that fun stuff up underneath there. This is a great before picture. And this is an after picture of the first step, degreasing and just getting into the rear end. So cleaning up the floor, it was quite messy. Quite a lot to this process. I do recommend, if I'd have done this again, I'd got the car up a little higher and then possibly drop the rear end to get a little bit more on top. Then that way you can put the car up on jack stands and then drop the rear end and then support it on lower jack stands, and it makes access on top the rear end as well as up and above much easier to get to. I mean, I was throwing the whole kitchen sink at this. I was using wire brushes, wire wheels, screwdrivers, razor blades, scrapers, just to get all the gunk that is built up around this rear end, whether it be the brake fluid leaking or, you know, rear end grease, whatever it might be. So it definitely takes some time and some patience. I also don't want to forget it's going to take some time to clean up after this process for sure. And here we are after majority of the cleanup has occurred. Quite a bit of time. It was pretty dirty getting all the dirt and grime off of this. So there is some bare metal there that the pneumatic wire tool took things down to. But it's a great start to put a good finish on there and have the rear end of this thing looking really nice. And as you notice, supporting the rear end, I did cover my jack with the plastic drop cloth, just to keep it protected from the chemicals in the POR. And here's a picture of the POR 15 metal primer in use, where the lighter grays and whites are where it really matched the bare metal. So it prepped the rust where there was still rusty, but then it definitely etched and prepared the surface for paint. And here we go, first coat of paint on, and my oh my, what a difference from where we started. Check that out. Got the frame, got the rear end, even got the back of the brakes, the drum brakes. So it's looking really good up underneath there. Did put a second coat on. When you do put a second coat on, it definitely goes on shinier. You also notice the new brake lines. This is when I took some time off from doing some cleaning and painting and install new brake shoes, all that fun stuff, cylinders, all that stuff in the rear brakes. So the rear brakes are completely new brake lines, as well as the rubber fitting rubber hose that goes from the top of the rear end into the frame, and installed that as well. These are before and after pictures of the fuel vapor lines. There's a cartridge that is up underneath the rear seat that these lines go into, at least the three. The other one goes to the front into a canister and then to the carburetor. So this three-piece tube kit was purchased from Inline Tube. I also purchased about 3 feet of 5/16 fuel line from the local auto parts store and just cut it as I needed it compared to the old one. And here we go with the final details. How about that W27 Doc Olds aluminum cover for the 10-bolt rear end? Looks friggin' amazing. Yes, I did change the rear end gear oil out and did add the AC Delco posi additive as well. I did install the W27 cover after the gas tank was installed. I just wanted a little bit more clearance. The W27 cover does stick a little further back and down than the stock cover. And as far as a sway bar installation, I just laid on my back, put that on my chest. I had the bolts ready, 2 on each side with the washers and lock nuts, and lifted it up and threaded the bolts and just tightened them up. So here's another picture of the completed process. The rear end's been painted, new rear end cover, the W27 that I always liked. We have the sway bar, the new stainless gas tank, and then you can also notice that I did repaint the frame as well around the rear there. And I did paint the straps for the stainless steel gas tank black. I was doing this as I was installing the rear end cover, so doing some multitasking, which helps, but hey, it all pays off in the end. And as far as the gas tank goes, one thing you need to do or check, there's 2 metal tabs where the stainless steel is folded up that are on the front of the gas tank. I did have to hammer those back a little bit to give myself enough clearance to get this gas tank positioned above and between the exhaust. And of course, as I was ready to install the gas tank, all the tools were laid out in the necessary positions. Bolts were laid out on the left and right of each tire close by where I could easily grab them. I put the gas tank on my stomach, believe it or not, and then rolled back, put the neck up where it should go, and then slowly pushed it forward, or to the rear of the car actually, and grabbed one strap and grabbed one bolt and just started tightening the strap in the bolt. And as soon as that one gripped, I moved on to the other one and did the same thing, and then positioned and checked my position on center before I really started tightening the bolts up. And as we wrap up this video, here is a before picture of the gas tank and the rear end and all that stuff before the swap. And here is an after picture, the sway bar, the awesome W27 cover, the stainless steel gas tank, and the freshly painted frame. So just a quick reminder, after you drop the tank, it's just a great opportunity to really tackle the rear end of the car from the rear frame back, you know, touch up that rear end, get it the way you want it. Brake lines possibly, new brakes, framework, even the gas line, and including the fuel vent lines as well. So it's just a great opportunity to get up underneath there and do what you need to do and get your car one step closer to running. Or if it's already running, it's looking better and better day by day. After all, who doesn't like a nice rear end to look at? So thanks for watching. Happy and safe cruising, and we will see you soon on the next episode.